Thanks, Lori. Good morning, everyone. It's a little weird that I can't see you all, but I know you're all beautiful, and I hope you're having a great morning. Thanks for sharing your time with me. I thought we just continue our conversation around this idea of perspective and how oftentimes in the work that we do and really in our just day-to-day lives and all of our relationships, it's really important for us to um, sometimes take a different perspective. So, the theme for this morning's conversation is around protective factors and resilience. And I came across this article in the New Yorker last week about how people learn to become resilient. And I think that resilience is becoming one of those buzzwords, like so many buzzwords that we hear with respect to social emotional learning, cultural competency, being trauma informed, right? All of these words are really becoming almost overused so that they're really vague and losing their meaning. And so I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but it's definitely a privilege that I've had the time to spend the last several years looking at both trauma and our body's stress response system, but then also some of the protective factors that build resilience in us throughout our lives. And so one of the main takeaways from this article, it looks at a series of longitudinal studies done over the last several decades to really identify what it is that makes us strong in the face of adversity, and what are some of the skills that we can build over time that make us more resilient, right? That give us the capacity to push through adversity. And so, one thing we know now scientifically is that our perspective is key to building resilience, right? So resilience is a combination of biological factors, including our temperament, our genes, and then our circumstances, which a lot of time we don't have control over. But then a significant amount of what makes us resilient is our ability to see difficulty as opportunity, right? So perception is key to resilience. And so one other piece of this article that was really important, I thought, was this concept of having an internal locus of control, right? Do you feel like you have some control over your situation, whatever that situation might be? And so we know that this idea of perspective or our attitudes and actions really are what make us more resilient. And so I will always continue to come back to the Center on the Developing Child's research. Their website is the most comprehensive, in my opinion, at really giving us a good idea about what it is, particularly in early childhood brain development, that not only builds resilience over time, but the website is full of the most palatable nuggets of understanding. And so, although some of these brief videos are a little dull, they're really filled with rich science and understanding. So we're going to take 2 minutes and watch this video.
Why do some people do well despite serious hardships? The science of resilience can help us find answers.
We define resilience as a good outcome in the face of adversity. The extent to which we can build capacities in all children early in their lives to be able to deal with whatever bumps in the road or major obstacles may be coming down the track. That's an investment in building strong human capital and healthy, productive adults.
Some children face more obstacles and adversity than others.
Like having a parent with a major mental illness, growing up in a very socioeconomically disadvantaged community, going to schools that are not good, being exposed to violence in the neighborhood or in the home.
But some children do well despite these significant obstacles.
Resilience is that ability or set of capacities for positive adaptation, allowing you to keep in balance.
We're talking about the kinds of capacities and skills and the abilities that give people a sense of mastery and management of difficulty.
It's tempting to think about children as either having this resilient quality or not. But resilience is built over time, just as and in parallel with how the architecture of the brain is built over time.
It's not just in the person, it's in the interaction between the person and the environment.
So we care about resilience for the same reason that we care about promoting healthy development, because in many respects it is the same. We are interested in promoting resilience in children so that, despite the odds, more and more children can grow up to be productive citizens.
So there's a couple key takeaways from that video. I think one is that we have to help children build mastery or a sense of mastery over their circumstances, right? And this is obviously not easy, but you do it every single day in the work that you do. And I think that it's important to remember one of the things that was mentioned is that it's both the quality and the context of children's environments and the relationships that they have in each of these environments, right? So we are born with a set of traits. That's our first sort of bioecology, right? We're born with a certain set of traits, temperament, genetics, etc. And then all of the relationships we have with these different environments throughout our lives, and then how each of these environments interacts with one another, all plays a part in our development, right? And so there's so much scholarship and information out there on resilience that sometimes it feels really overwhelming, at least for me it has. So I will share with you over time what I have found to be the most useful resources for me to sort of wrap my head around what really are some of the protective factors, and then what do we have control over in the environments that we share space and time with children, and what don't we have control over, so that we can really focus intentionally on helping promote some of these protective factors that are going to lead to resilience in the children that we work with, and honestly in our own lives and with our own children. So this comes from a website called Futures Without Violence. There's a lot of scholarship and research on how to help children exposed to violence, since we know that it's relatively ubiquitous in our society. And so again, it's a combination of both individual, family, and community factors, right? And so in schools, in education, with respect to the various factors that protect individuals from adversity, we know temperament is one. We don't have control over a child's temperament, right? Relationships is one, and we do have control over helping our children understand how to form strong, healthy relationships with their peers. And then, of course, we model these skills to children in all of our relationships among one another as adults in the school environment, right? Understanding, we can help children make sense of their life experiences. We can help them with creating opportunities to experience mastery, right? We can provide opportunities for them to learn how to express themselves using words, through music, the arts, right? The arts are a real asset for us, a real tool for us to help children learn how to express themselves in healthy ways, because perhaps the ways that they have learned to adapt to adversity in their environments are maladaptive in the school setting, right? So we do have control over giving children the ability to learn how to express themselves. And then, of course, we can help children understand how to resolve conflict. And the trick there is that we have to get good at understanding how to resolve conflict ourselves as adults with our relationships, right? So this is not easy stuff, but practice makes progress, right? Within the family setting, we don't have a lot of control over children's family settings, but what do we have control over with respect to how we support families and caregivers, right? So we can provide networks for them. We can help be the connector for families to perhaps the resources that they need to deal with whatever it is that they are trying to navigate in their lives. And then, of course, community. I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with some of my colleagues at Hope about community and culture and what do these things mean really, right? And so we know that culture really is a shared set of values, a shared set of belief systems, and really a shared understanding of how we treat one another, right? And so we have the capacity within our school communities to create a culture of caring, right? And that doesn't have to be all touchy-feely, right? It just means that we show up, we try to acknowledge and work through our bias, and we address each other with respect, right? And so the school community, we have the ability to be mentors and to provide our children and families with access to resources and services. And so again, all of the buzzwords really thrown around lately: trauma, trauma-informed, was a trauma-informed school, restorative justice, being culturally responsive, mindfulness, resilience. All of these things really are interconnected, right? And you almost can't do one without the other. But one of the most important lessons I think that I've learned in the last several years is that these aren't programs, these aren't things that we necessarily do, it's who we are, right? And so we have to decide as a community who we are. And then through that, we are able to strengthen what we consider to be programs and processes and procedures. And so this video I'm moderately to seriously obsessed with, because in my opinion, my humble opinion, it really captures almost all of these concepts, right? In one video, but also in one community. This is in El Cerrito High School. And I'm going to share it with you, and then we'll talk about it a little bit afterwards.
El Cerrito is kind of like one big family.
I guess I mostly like the diversity of the school. You know, it's not like all the stereotypes. Everyone's all mixed together. It feels like a family, I guess.
It's really nice to know that everybody's there to support you, and all the teachers and admin and all them, especially like GMP. Whenever you need something, you just come here and they help you.
I don't know if any other school has quite a vast array of healing opportunities like that are offered here.
What we found is that the young people who arrive at school who are trauma impacted, that the school building traditionally is not set up to work effectively with young people who arrive in the building with those kinds of challenges. And so typically their behaviors are maladaptive in this setting. They may be very adaptive in other settings. The school building, the school community as a whole, over generations, has not been curious about that dynamic, but they've been very judgmental. The school building has said when young people arrive, angry when young people arrive, in a lot of ways that don't support classroom learning. The response has been, you don't belong here. And the response has been to exclude those young people from this experience. That is the school to prison pipeline, because we know where those young people end up. A number of us in the school community have been in conversation over a period of time about the best way to strengthen our restorative practice here at school. And we were looking for meaningful ways to include students in that conversation and in that work. And so that was the impetus for the Culture Keepers.
You are a special group of kids that we spotted that is a leader to the school.
You know, everybody has people to hang out with. So it's like people from almost every group.
We practice peer mediation. We do mindfulness practice.
We mostly help teachers with their students so they won't have to get a referral and go out of class, so they can keep on learning in their class.
We'll try our best to help the school be less complicated for the administrators and more comfortable for the students.
Specifically, we wanted to bring them in to the disciplinary process because that seemed like a locus for a lot of suffering here at school.
Young folks get into a fight. What happens is I get suspended, other kid gets suspended. We both get sent home for a few days to cool off. We come back to the school. Nothing was ever addressed. He said something to me in the hallway. We blow up into another fight. I think our young folks, they're fed up with a lot of, in a sense, like an old school way of how things are being dealt with.
We knew that we wanted to include Naroga and dynamic mindfulness in that process because we knew that to intervene in moments that were charged, that were maybe full of anger or other kinds of impulsive, reactive energy, that it would be helpful to give young people and also the adults in the process skills and tools to work with those kinds of emotions in ways that were not reactive, in ways that created space for other possibilities to arise. Dynamic mindfulness is a tool to allow people in those moments to come into that space really ready to do that work.
So bringing in some restorative trauma-informed practices, some breathing, some meditation, just to help flip the script. And they're doing it among their peers, and peers are buying into it. So they're just like, let's keep going.
Say somebody's getting kicked out of class, and so before they would get a referral, they would send us to, you know, talk to the kid, try to do some like breathing work or exercises, and just try to calm the situation down to where it doesn't have to go to admin and then get referrals and stuff.
They bring a middleman into conflict mediation because sometimes when you're talking to an adult, it can feel like maybe they don't understand, and they bring in sort of a person around your age that can maybe relate with you a little bit more. And I think for a lot of people that seems a little less scary or, you know, a little less intimidating.
We like do meditation, so I get to like calm them down, and then we'll start talking about a situation that happened. I can give my advice on how to avoid the situation again, or like how to fix it without being physical or like really loud and arguing with people. So just like calm down, think about like your consequences before you take action.
It means a lot to me because I used to be one of those students that had to get a referral. So like knowing that I can help them like chill and not get a referral so they can go back and learn what they have to, it feels good.
The work of mindfulness, the James Morehouse Project more generally, allows us to be in closer relationship with students who are up against these challenges in ways that invite them in ways that include them in the work that we're doing, in ways that give them meaningful skills and tools to work with the challenges in their lives.
Students really are hungry for tools to help manage themselves.
The culture keepers, that's a good thing they do, because they tell us just step away from the problem and blow in and out.
I know a lot of students at Osarito, they have a lot going on, stressing off of family at school or something outside of school.
I'm not getting as mad no more because I can calm myself now. Using the mindful thing, I like use my neck. We do it every morning, so it helped me a lot to, you know, get the stress off of me so I can move on.
I look at situations differently. Before we do this, I see like people having a problem or something, or people arguing, and I just, you know, go whatever. But like if I see that I can like help the situation, and then I'll kill the situation, calm people down.
It touches my heart because I really put my heart into being a culture keeper, and whatever help I can do in the school as being a leader or anything, I put myself to it.
It's the skills, it's the resource and capacity, and also underneath that, it's the relationships that they build with caring adults and with supportive peers that allow them to feel like they belong here in the school community, like the school community is responsive to their needs, and that the school community supports them in their effort to live lives that are really more closely aligned to their own values and commitments.
So I absolutely love that video. And of course, you can see how powerful an impact that giving these students first the capacity to address their needs themselves, right? Through teaching them that not only the mindfulness, but also the ability to help their peers navigate conflict, right? And so again, this idea of having internal locus of control over your situation is really an important protective factor that we have the capacity to develop in each other and of course in students. So I just want to share this quickly with you before we move on. This is another website that I have found to be extremely useful. I will perhaps go into navigating it more in the future, but if you go onto this website, you can hover over these different gestures, right? So celebrate, comfort, collaborate, listen, inspire. Each of these gestures help us calm our own stress response systems, but then also help us calm the individuals that we're engaged with, right? So if you go to celebrate, for example, using put-ups, not put-downs, and you clicked on that, you're going to get age-appropriate tips for the classroom and individual, right? And so each one of those gestures are ways that we can build a culture of caring, right? And so each one of those gestures, when you click on it, you can get age-appropriate tips for how to incorporate that gesture into your classroom setting, and of course, then into your day-to-day interactions, right? So a simple thing of celebrate is using somebody's name in a positive way. There's been lots of research around how it feels when somebody uses your name. And so that is just one way of celebrating our children. And so I want you to remember that it really is the small gestures in our day-to-day lives that make a difference, and that we don't have to be therapists to behave therapeutically, and that if we work on incorporating each of these gestures into our day-to-day interactions and of course into our classroom environments, then we can really start to help build this internal locus of control in each other, in ourselves, and then with our students. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much. I think we have a few minutes for questions, and of course we'll share the slides and the resources that I discussed today.
Thanks, Lori. There's lots of people in the chat room thanking you for this very inspirational talk, and specifically the video, the Culture Keepers video. Interestingly, Becky Searles went to that high school, and she said things have definitely changed. So if there are questions, you can throw them in the chat. I will go back up to one of the first comments that was made. Jamila talked about that she had heard that that some people might not be born with a genetic predisposition to be hopeful. Is that something that you've heard about? And if so, is there are there strategies, are there ways that even if you're not genetically predispositioned to be hopeful, that you can learn to be hopeful?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I know that temperament, of course, plays a huge role, right? And not being hopeful would be part of your temperament, right? Having a sense of humor is part of your temperament. So our challenge as educators is to model optimism, right? To help individuals, students, children, ourselves perhaps we're not hopeful people. I would say most of us probably are because we're in education. But how do we model perspective, shifting perspective, being optimistic, looking at things through a different lens, right? So how do we help individuals start to reframe situations that allows them to feel a sense of control, right? So what do I have control over, what don't I, and then moving forward with that. So it really is, you know, trying to help individuals take a strengths-based approach to themselves, right? I might not be great at this, but I'm really good at this. And so how do I leverage my assets for the good?
Great, thank you. All right, I will be sending out the link to this recording along with your professional development certificates later on this afternoon. And that wraps up today's professional development from Lori. And I hope you all have an awesome day and see many of you on the Zoom later. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.